Like the game against David Arnett, this game was also from the national championship, and it was also in the last round on the first board for the title. In this position I was playing against Tal Shaked. We were both 13 years old. It was the national elementary championship played in Arizona. Take a look at the position. It's from the Pelikan Sicillian, and it's actually been played many times by strong grandmasters. And in this position I played c4. What do you think White's threat was? Imagine you have the black pieces. Your move. Think of the scenario though. You're playing in the national championship. If you win, you're the national champion. You're the best in the country. There's a lot of pressure there. Whenever your opponent makes a move, the first question you should ask is, what is his threat? That's the most important thing for any of us to think about playing chess. Our opponents always have ideas. In this position I had a very dangerous idea. Do you see what it was? Think about it for a minute. Let's look at what he did. He played g6. I had a trap waiting for him. Now before we go on, I want to say something about traps, because you know, when I work with my students, and I have a lot of kids who I work with in a public school in New York City, they always want to set traps for their opponent. They always want to trick them. There's a very important rule about traps. Only set traps when it doesn't make your position worse. If you have a natural move which develops your pieces, which makes your position a little bit better, it's good to set a trap. But never make your position worse by setting a trap. Sometimes you're going to make a move which makes your position really bad, but maybe I'll fall for this thing and I can win right away. That's not the right way to play chess, because we have to always assume that our opponents are good. In this position, I set a trap by playing c4, but it was the natural move in the position as well. I'm defending my d5 pawn. I'm taking a little more space on the queen side. It's a good move for me to play. Now after he plays g6, have you found my threat yet? I played queen a4. And suddenly black is in huge trouble. I'm threatening mate in one, two ways. Both knight takes d6, double check and mate. And knight c7 will end the game right away. And the amazing thing is there's no way for black to defend against it without losing material. Take a look at it. If he plays bishop d7, what would I do? We have mate in one with what's called the smothered checkmate. Knight takes d6. See how the black king is smothered by his own pieces? The queen, bishop, knight, and other bishop, and pawn on f7. All lock the black king in. Knight takes d6 is mate. The game would end right away. Another try would be queen d7. What would you play now with white? Don't go on until you see it. I have two ways to win material, in fact. I have to take advantage of the pinned piece. Do you see white's idea? The first one is knight c7 check. The queen can't take the knight because the queen is pinned to the king, so the king has to move over to d8. Notice, of course, that it would be a big mistake for me to take his rook right away, because after knight takes a8, my queen is hanging on a4. It's important for me to use the in-between move. Queen takes d7. He would take back, bishop takes d7. And then after knight takes a8, I've won a rook. But in this position I've won a rook, and my knight is trapped, and he can win it. He'll probably play the next two moves, king c8, followed by king b8. There's no way for my knight to get out. I've won a knight for a rook, which is really good, but I have better. What's my best move? When you have a good move, take a minute. Look for a better move. You always want to play the best move in chess. I could win a rook for a knight, but I can do better. I should play knight takes d6 check. Again, the queen can't take it because of the pin to the king. The king has to move over. And then I can play another move. Knight takes f7. Check once more. I've taken two pawns already, and now I'm forking the other rook. Let me ask you a question. What would you do if you played king c7? Here I'd have the option of using another in-between move. I could play d6. Check. The king goes back to b8. Then I could trade queens. Queen takes d7. Bishop takes d7. And now I have the option of taking either his rook or taking his knight and then his rook. My position is really winning. So after knight f7 check, he would go to e8. Then I would trade queens. Queen takes d7. Bishop takes d7. And now it's time to take the rook. Knight takes h8. Now black can still trap my knight, but after bishop g7, what does white do? If you're going to lose a piece, try to get whatever you can for it. Here I can get one last pawn. Knight takes g6. And after he takes back, I've got a rook and three pawns for a knight. That's a big advantage. Notice the difference here. If we return to the position after queen d7, I had two options, both were very good. Knight c7 check and knight takes d6 check. You probably would see knight c7 check first, but if we play the best move, we get 3 pawns more. Take a moment whenever you see a good move. Find the best move. My opponent didn't play this, though. After queen a4, he tried to get the king out of the way fast, with bishop g7. Now, when you're very, very close to a dream, to winning the national championship, it's very easy to get emotional, to get excited, and to stop making good decisions. At this part of the game, I knew I was winning, but I also knew that I had to play all the best moves, because Tal is a very, very good player, and if I give him a chance, he'll definitely take advantage of it. First of all, I took his rook. Knight c7 check. King f8. Knight takes a8. I'm threatening the a7 pawn with my queen, so he played a6. This responded to my threat, but also, his only idea would be to trap my knight on a8. If he can get the knight, maybe he has some chance. And now I did everything I could to stop it, to get my knight out of the corner. When your opponent is losing, they're scared. They've got to put everything they've got into trying to save the game, so you have to be just as intense. I played queen b3, getting ready to bring my knight back to b6. Notice the difference. If I had played bishop e3, which also covers the b6 square, he would have the discovered attack bishop d7, attacking my queen, and his next move will be queen takes knight. Queen b3 was the most accurate. Now bishop d7 doesn't attack anything, so I can just bring the knight back, knight b6. Also, of course, I would have the option of queen takes b7, taking another pawn, and defending my knight as well. After queen b3, he played b5, trying to keep the knight in there. What would you do now with white? Now I played bishop e3, covering the b6 square. He played knight f5. I played knight b6. I'm still calculating things. My point now is if he plays knight takes bishop, I can just place queen takes e3, and I'm still defending my knight on b6. I'm up a whole rook. The battle now is to try to get the knight out of the corner. He played bishop b7. I was threatening to take it. I played c takes b5, a takes b5, and here finally I cleared the path for the knight to come all the way home. Bishop takes b5. Whenever I want to, I can bring my knight back to either c4 or a4. Everything is safe. I'm up a whole rook, and he resigned, and I won the national championship. So you see, my opponent's big mistake in this game was after I played a move, he didn't take a moment and think, what is his threat? What is his next move? Let's go back for 1 second and try to see what black should have played. Let's put ourselves in my opponent's place. White just played c4. So you ask yourself, what is my opponent's threat? Queen a4. How can I stop that threat? What would you play with black now? Some of you may think the best thing to do is to chase the knight away, but this would be a huge mistake because it doesn't do the trick. After a6, the trap is still there. White can simply play queen a4, and white is winning once again. You can't even take the knight. A takes b5, because the pawn was pinned to the rook. After queen takes a8, I've won an exchange, a rook for a knight. So a6 doesn't stop it. Sometimes, when we're looking at this kind of position, we have to visualize 2 moves ahead. Here, the key weakness for him is the d6 square. And what he has to do is he has to move his knight on e7. He should play knight g6, or knight f5. Let's look at knight g6. Now the d6 pawn is defended, so what's the difference? After queen a4, do you see what black can play? Now he can play bishop d7. Remember, with the knight back on e7, knight takes d6 was mate. But now with the knight gone, the d6 pawn is defended, and black is fine. So if Tal had asked, what is my opponent's threat? He would have found it, probably would have found knight g6, and the game would have continued. The national championship was on the line, and he didn't ask, what is my opponent's threat?